My name is Dr. Fouzi Slisli, and today I will be talking to you about the work of Jacques Derrida and deconstruction. We should remember that last week we introduced the topic. We talked about post-structuralism, its contribution to literary criticism, its relationship to structuralism. We said that post-structuralism is a rebellion against structuralism, and one of the main points that came out about it is that it rejects the idea that literature or cultural products in general can be studied separate from history or culture. Structuralism maintained that you can study literature just from a scientific perspective, separate from history, culture, or economy, or so on. Post-structuralism rejected this idea, saying that literary products, literary texts, are part of historical processes, and we cannot ignore those historical processes, and literary scholarship should try to locate those texts within their proper historical, economic, sociological developments. So we talked mostly about the general ideas of post-structuralism and deconstruction. Today I want to introduce you to one of the main or most influential post-structuralist thinkers, the scholar who invented the idea of deconstruction and the critique of deconstruction, the French scholar Jacques Derrida. Jacques Derrida was born in Algeria, Aljazair, and he grew up there and studied there, and finished his school later on in France, where he emigrated and became one of the most prominent philosophers and scholars of the 20th century. So, post-structuralism, first of all, is a European-based theoretical movement that departs from structuralist methods of analysis. The most important names in post-structuralism are Jacques Lacan in psychoanalysis, Michel Foucault in history, and Jacques Derrida in philosophy. Deconstruction is a US-based method of literary and cultural analysis, which means that post-structuralism emerged in Europe, and from Europe spread, from France spread to the rest of Europe. The deconstruction became famous in the United States. They used the work of Jacques Derrida, and it became very famous in the United States through the work of G. Hillis Miller, Jeffrey Hartman, Paul Doman, and Barbara Johnson. Derrida's central works, he wrote extensively. We start first with books. There is the early books were, of course, of grammatology, which was written in 1967, Speech and Phenomena, which was written in 1967 also, Writing and Difference, which was also published in 1967. From there he expanded into more cultural and historical subjects. So in 1992 he published Acts of Literature. In 1993 he published Spectres of Marx, and in 1997 he published Of Hospitality. Of the most famous articles, there is the article Structure, Sign and Play in the Discourse of the Human Sciences. It was published in 1966. Also appeared in Writing and Difference, and also the famous paper Signature Event Context, which was written in 1977. Derrida's most important ideas have to do with his relationship to language. First of all, Derrida defines language first by what language is not. For Derrida, Derrida radically challenges the common sense assumption about language. For him, language is not a vehicle for the communication of pre-existing thought. So it doesn't work like, we have thought, they exist outside language, and then those thoughts, we put them into language and we communicate them. That's not how it works. Derrida says that even those thoughts are themselves language. Even when a person is sitting by himself or herself and they're just thinking, that's the soul asking questions and responding, right? It's a dialogue inside us. So thoughts are also a product of language, and this is nothing new. Greek philosophers, Plato and Socrates, established this back in 5 BC, so that even our thoughts are themselves language. So language is not a vehicle for communicating pre-existing thoughts. Language is not an instrument or tool in man's hand. Language rather thinks man and his world. So previously we thought that language is a tool that we use to reflect our world. And this tool is like a mirror. It's transparent. There is reality, and we use language to reflect that reality. Well, that's too simplistic. That's not how things work. According to Derrida and post-structuralism, there is no pre-linguistic reality. All reality is produced and created by a discourse. So that means that there is no reality except as we see it through discourse. Without language, we cannot prove the existence of anything. Even my own existence, I cannot prove my existence except by using language. And if I don't have to use language, I would have to use a document or a passport or a residency paper or some document of some sort. But they are all products of language and signifying processes. Without language, we cannot produce, we cannot reflect reality, we cannot produce reality. So in that sense, language is active in the production of reality. We construct reality through language. Language is not just a transparent tool that we use, but it's a very active, the most important item in constructing reality, in constructing even our existence, our persons, our selves. Our language is the central, most important item, without which none of this would be possible. We couldn't prove the existence of the world, we couldn't establish the existence of anything. So language is not an instrument or tool in man's hands. Language rather thinks man and his world. Language is not a transparent window onto the world. The world is created and produced by language. For Derrida, language is unreliable. It's unreliable. The communication happens only when we put so much effort to limit the noise, that what linguists call noise. These are the elements that prevent communication from happening. So language is very unreliable. There is no pre-discursive reality. Every reality is shaped and accessed by discourse. Derrida says there is nothing outside the text. Everything is a text. Texts always refer to other texts. And Frederick Jameson, the famous post-structuralist from the United States, talks about the prison house of language. That's the title of his famous book, The Prison House of Language. As humans, he says, we are trapped within language. We cannot exist outside language. So this gives language a far bigger importance in shaping our world, in shaping ourselves, than previously thought. In the past, we thought of language just as a transparent tool. today we think of language as a very constitutive component of our existence, of our world. Language constructs and shapes the world. Note that Derrida has a very broad notion of text that includes all types of sign systems. So whenever there is a sign system for Derrida, that's a text. When we look at advertisements on television, that's a text. When we look at society from a sociological perspective, that's a text. When we look at ourselves and try to analyze ourselves, that's a text. So whenever there is a signifying system for Derrida, that's a text. And so these are some of the most important ideas for Jacques Derrida. It involves mostly the definition of language, not as transparent as previously thought, but as a far important, a more important component in shaping and in constructing reality and in constructing the world. And with this, that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you in our next session. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.